All right, we're back for another edition of the 41 Files Kansas City podcast, an episode I'm calling the Below Zero edition. It's Wednesday, January 30th, and it certainly feels like it outside here in Kansas City. It's not often we come to you when the temperatures are below zero outside, and we're celebrating the occasion by talking all things weather. And so we've assembled an all-star panel of people to talk about the weather for us. In studio is 41. I was about to say NBC Action News, but we kind of got rid of that a long time ago. 41 Action News today, meteorologist Lindsay Anderson. Lindsay, good morning.
Hey, good morning. This is fun. I'm glad I can be on today.
We have a special guest from my home state of Minnesota, the mayor of Bemidji, and that's Rita Albrecht. Rita, good morning.
Well, good morning to you all, and thanks for giving me a call and having me on. Look forward to the discussion.
And our listeners might hear a familiar voice next. Joining us on the phone, former meteorologist here in Kansas City and now a meteorologist at NBC in Chicago, Kalee Dionne. Kalee, good morning.
Hey, good morning, guys. Glad to be here. Thanks for having me.
I forgot to include in your title, new mom.
That's right.
Yes, most important.
So exciting.
So I'm digital producer Sam Hartle. Our normal host today, Taylor Hedness, is under the weather appropriately. Taylor, we hope you feel better. Guys, I had -2 on my thermometer this morning here in Roland Park, and that seemed to be a fairly common thing. And while that's plenty cold for us here in Kansas City, it's nowhere near as bad as it could be in other places. So that's where we've got the mayor of Bemidji. And so Bemidji is for those who are not inclined, it's kind of in northern Minnesota a little bit. If you've heard the tales of Paul Bunyan and Babe the Blue Ox, they've got some giant statues up there. And
right, yeah, we're kind of the home of the iconic Paul and Babe statues.
So, Mayor, how low did things get up there this morning?
I think it was probably in Bemidji was around 37, 38 below, plus a wind chill of around 60 below. So to get people's mental map, we're at the just below the chimney of Minnesota, about 100 miles south of the border, and we're the first city on the Mississippi, so the headwaters of the Mississippi area. So that kind of gives you a little bit of context of where we are in north central Minnesota. But the deep freeze that came down from Canada just enveloped our whole state, and so every community in the whole state was below zero, and our wind chill factors were record breaking.
So do you guys blame Canada for this, or who's held accountable for this cold snap?
Generally speaking, we blame a lot of our weather on either North Dakota or Canada. Alberta Clipper meteorologists know the Alberta Clipper that usually brings a big snowstorm to us, and this whole change in the jet stream. I'm assuming, I don't know, meteorologists can answer that, but you know, this sink of air coming down from Canada has just been quite brutal for us.
Have you physically walked outside? What's that like when it's -37 degrees?
You know, it's interesting. It's kind of like prickly on your face if you have exposed skin, like and the breath on your eyelashes will immediately put frosty eyelashes on you, and your mustache and your eyebrows will frost up, but it's just kind of a prickly feeling. We try to avoid going out with exposed skin, but you know, from here to the parking lot, there's always that chance. But it is so brutal, and I know that Lindsay and Kalee could share this too. But within a couple minutes of exposed skin out there, when it's windy and below zero like this, you can freeze your cheeks pretty easily.
Yeah, I can imagine the frostbite would happen in minutes. I mean, that's what -45 to -55 is minutes outside frostbite.
Well, you always see, like, sometimes when it's this cold, you see the meteorologists out doing, like, some experiments where they throw a cup of boiling water outside. And it seems like this would be the location to do that kind of stuff. How cold?
Everybody's doing that.
Oh, yeah.
What are some of the other tricks that you guys, the meteorologists, use to demonstrate how stupid cold it is outside?
What are other ones?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the boiling water. That visually, I actually just did it outside here.
Okay, right. Did it work?
And it worked here. I mean, we're at -3 degrees right now in Kansas City. So ideally, you have those negative temperatures. Of course, it's going to look pretty amazing in Chicago and Minnesota, Minneapolis, and northward with that experiment. I also wanted to just bring a cup of water outside. Now, obviously, water freezes at 32 degrees. We all know that. We've learned that since like first grade, kindergarten. But how long and how quickly it freezes over is pretty fascinating with this cold weather. I mean, 5 minutes and you've got a cup of frozen ice, in those type of temperatures.
It works great to chill wine, however.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, but you don't want to leave your beer out in the outside cooler. That's the challenge. If there's not enough room in the in the fridge in the house, we have this ready-made cooler outside, but that could be a bad mistake. If you did that.
Yeah.
Mayor, I was on your...
in South Bend froze his Jack whiskey this morning in shot glasses.
Oh, my gosh. That's amazing.
And then you just put that in your iced coffee. Yeah.
Yeah, there you go.
A survival tip, right?
Yeah,
some frozen coffee in the or frozen whiskey in the coffee. Mayor, I was on your Twitter feed last night, and much like here in Kansas City, a lot of organizations and schools are canceling classes or events and stuff like that. Are people in Bemidji still venturing out to like coffee shops or restaurants? And how have they been kind of handling it?
It's kind of a mix. I would say that, like a lot of natural disasters or tragedies, there is a unifying factor. In fact, we kind of wear that as a badge of honor here in Minnesota. That we're hardy, we're the bold North. We can muddle through. But I will say that our schools are closed, our universities are closed, our mall is closed. So a number of businesses have chosen to just close because it's safer for their employees not to have to get in the car and come to work. But on the other hand, we have chosen to keep some facilities open, like our public library tends to be a drop-in center for people who don't have a warm place during the day. So we don't want to have them not have a place to be. So it's a mixed bag. But in general, there's a lot of businesses that are closed today simply because people are just not out and about. Vehicles don't want to start and don't want to run, and the roads are very icy because the wind has sort of polished them off. And so it's a mixed bag, but I think people are muddling through.
Now, how does this compare to your winters in the past? I mean, yeah, like you said, usually Minnesotans, you can deal with all sorts of cold weather, but how is this compared to the past winters that you've experienced?
As a child, and I'm in my 60s, so as a child, we experienced a lot of below zero weather. But in the last 20 years, we really haven't had that many below zero days. If you look at the trend line, the previous 100 years to the most recent 100, it is substantially fewer below sub-zero, sub-20 below days that we've ever had. So. It's changing. Our climate is definitely changing, and it's making our winters different. Our winters are warmer, and this is just sort of an anomaly now that we have this very severe weather. The last time I think we had 60 below was back in, I want to say 1996 or somewhere in that time when the governor actually shut down the state, and he said, we're all going to stay home.
Yeah. Two decades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mayor, tourism has always been a pretty important part of Bemidji's economy, for the Paul Bunyan. And then, obviously, in northern Minnesota, you have fishing and ice fishing.
Mm-hmm. Northern Lights.
Right, Northern Lights.
Snowmobiling.
Right, snowmobiling. So there are things that you had mentioned that it's kind of a thing of pride for Minnesotans. And this is something that you can actually take advantage of. Maybe not when it's minus 38 degrees outside, but a normal winter, there are things to do in Bemidji.
Yeah, right. And that's a really good point. That, for example, you might be surprised. We're the state of 10,000 lakes, right? That's one of our namesakes. But if you ask the resort operators, they actually are busier in the winter for ice fishing than they are in the summer, which is kind of crazy. But they have ice fishing houses now that are just like a mobile home. And so, teachers, I saw pictures, teachers that were off school yesterday, they were right to the fish house to be ice fishing because it's warm in there and it's fun and they have a day off. And so, yes, winter activities are just as important for Minnesotans as summer. So snowshoeing, cross-country skiing, downhill skiing, believe it or not. We don't have a lot of mountains, but we have a little bit of places where you can ski down. And snowmobiling, of course, snowmobiles were first invented in northern Minnesota, and we're the home of Arctic Cat and Polaris. And so there's a lot of snowmobile trails. In this region in Bemidji, we probably have 450 miles of Grant-Nade snowmobile trails that are groomed every day or, weekly for snowmobiling. And so it is a very important aspect of our winters.
You got to make the most of it when you're up there. I mean, it is beautiful in the winter, but with these temperatures, I can imagine there's a point where it is too cold to even do anything or be out there.
That's true. We try to, practice safety and caution people. And I don't think that people want to, if they do get into trouble, there's emergency people that have to come and rescue them, right? And it's not a good idea to put extra pressure on them to do things. So we're trying to make sure that people are using their heads and being safe and all of that. But the winter is an important part. In this part of Minnesota, we're a big timber production area. So, winter is important because a lot of the wood they are going to cut is in a lower, wetter area, so that in frozen conditions in the winter, you can go in there without harming any of the surrounding area, and you can cut timber. So there are some reasons to have a good frosty winter because it helps freeze down those logging roads.
Oh. Mayor, I've got one question, then we'll let you get back to your ice house. What's the strangest or the craziest thing you've seen one of your citizens do during this cold snap? Yesterday I was driving by a construction site and saw one of the workers wearing a T-shirt, and kudos to them, I guess. Whatever works, but it was a little odd to me. Anything that stood out during this week's cold snap?
Well, I haven't seen it here in Bemidji, but I know I do see it on campus occasionally, and that is that students will wear shorts in the middle of winter, or they'll wear flip-flops with socks or something like that. And in Bemidji, at Bemidji State University, all of our campus is connected by underground tunnels because, after all, it's winter up here sometimes, and so it's nice to be connected. So they'll get out of bed, put on their shorts and their flip-flops, they'll go to class. And if they end up having to go outside the tunnels, you might see them with shorts on. So that would probably be the craziest thing, is some students with shorts on.
Lindsay, I don't know if you have a 7-day forecast for Bemidji, but so I looked it up, and you get above zero on Friday. So there's maybe light at the end of the tunnel, and 26 on Saturday. On Saturday.
It's a virtual heat wave. It's like, what is that, 75, 100-degree difference or something like that.
I mean, it's quite amazing. As fast as that cold air moved in, I mean, it's going to retreat pretty quickly, too. And luckily, we can all thaw out a little bit. Right.
Hey, Mayor, I appreciate the time and you telling us a little bit about how you and your residents are surviving the cold up in Bemidji.
Yeah, well, we're having fun, and we had Hockey Day last weekend, or I should say on the 19th of January, and we spent 3 days outside. It was 26 below when we dropped the puck on Saturday morning, and we had 5 outdoor hockey games, including the university here, and it was the coldest NCAA Division I hockey outdoor game on record. So there you have it. That might be the oddest thing you would see up here.
Mayor, good luck to you all.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
All right, Kalee, you still with us?
I am. I did drop out for a second and had to call back in.
Oh, I didn't even notice.
I know. She was so sneaky.
Right
now.
I'm sly.
Yeah.
All right, so I'll edit out this little side chat, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap it up. And okay. So go ahead.
I just said sounds good.
All right, Lindsay, it's wintertime.
It is.
In the Midwest, it's supposed to be cold. Talk to me about what this week has been in terms of, okay, hey, it's normally winter, but what were the factors involved that made this so much unique in terms of the temperature.
Yeah, I mean, yes, it's been cold, and that's what kills me sometimes is just on social media and how people are like, oh, we know what this cold is like. No, actually, we haven't seen this cold in so long. Standing in front of the wind chill map this morning and pointing out the wind chills in Chicago up through Minnesota, but also here in Kansas, Missouri. I mean, negative 35 is what it felt like in Maryville this morning. I mean, I have not seen those numbers ever. So this was quite something. This is such a strong air mass. But luckily for us in Kansas City, it really is only around here for 24 hours. I mean, it is out by tomorrow mid-morning.
Is polar vortex, is that just a marketing thing? Is that like the best way to describe it?
Well, yeah. I mean, the polar vortex has always been around. I mean, this has been a term from the 1900s, I think, Kalee. So this is something but now, of course, just with social media and the media in general, we like to find those terms and stick them out a little bit more as keywords. But this is certainly something like the polar air is coming down. Now, the polar vortex is centered in the North Pole and over the Arctic. But we are getting these blasts of part of the polar air, so these polar vortices essentially coming down, and that's what we're tapping into.
So one of the places that got hit with the cold snap this week is Chicago. Mm-hmm. Chicago, a wonderful place to visit in the spring, summer, and fall, but maybe not quite so much in the wintertime. I'll bring in Kalee. You moved to Chicago a couple of years ago. How does this winter compare so far to your previous winters there?
So the previous winter since I've moved back, because I grew up here, so since I've moved back, they haven't been that bad. They've actually been relatively mild, not as much snow, so the winters have been good. Now, growing up, it was a little bit different. We've had a few really bad winters growing up. But I do believe that this is trying to show me something, because back when I was in Kansas City in 2014, when the polar vortex term had taken charge, and, as Lindsay was talking about, it's been around forever, but then everybody decides, oh, we like this term, we're going to use it and blow it out of the water. 2014, they, on the morning show in Kansas City, made me a shirt that said I survived the polar vortex, because I was so annoyed at how often polar vortex word was being thrown around and acting like it was some, crazy thing. So I just feel like this is coming to haunt me because of that.
Yeah, that's so funny. No, now you don't have to be in the station during the polar vortex. You can be at home with your sweet baby.
I know. I'm on maternity leave, which is great because I don't have to go outside and I don't have to travel to work, but I'm still stuck inside. So there's like a catch-22 because I've got cabin fever because I can't go anywhere because it's so, just insane cold up here right now. Insane.
So cold that, and so speaking of social media, I was doing some research for the podcast yesterday, and I came across the hashtag Chiberia, which is, I guess, one of the. How are Chicagoans handling the cold? It's one thing, if like in Brainerd, where this is kind of their thing, but Chicago's a pretty diverse group. Lots of people moved there from across the country. Maybe some of them not quite as used to the cold. How are they dealing with it?
Well, the entire city is pretty much shut down. I don't even think since I moved back or even paid attention that the city has shut down this much for even a snowstorm. So it is, we've got all schools closed at this point, daycares, we've got, a lot of businesses that are closed just so that their employees don't have to travel. And I think a guy I work with, he was on a bus this morning to come to work, and he was the only one on the bus. Wow. The entire CTA Chicago transit system bus, he was the only one on it. So a lot of the trains have been canceled. Amtrak is not running today because of, the tracks are just too cold. And, they can light them on fire and kind of heat them up a little bit, but that isn't even working. So they've had to cancel those. I think this, a lot of people say, oh, you moved to Chicago, this is what you get. That term, that really hasn't been used because it's one for the books, that's for sure. I think it's been the fifth coldest ever recorded temperature in Chicago at this point this morning, and 27 was the all-time below 27 below zero. So we could flirt with that tonight going into tomorrow morning. So we might be singing a different tune once we go into tomorrow. But at least we literally have a 61-degree temperature swing between today in the afternoon to Sunday. So we're just wait a day.
Yeah, I saw mid-40s maybe in Chicago on Monday.
Yeah.
And then snow the day after, but, you win some, you lose some. There was a photo, the Chicago Tribune had a photo gallery that I saw yesterday, and one of their photos was a pigeon had found like a piece of burning charcoal that had fallen on the sidewalk and was crouched right next to it.
Even the pigeons are trying to
even the pigeons in Chicago are cold.
There's that classic video that went around, oh gosh, I think it was the last cold spell that you guys had in Chicago, of a guy standing in one of the train stops or the L subway, and he's holding his pizza up at the heater. I don't know if you guys all saw that. Like, this is how Chicago does winter. This is how Chicago does winter. But I'm sure that it's like that's not even going to work at this point in these kind of weather conditions.
No, I mean, really, we're finding frozen rats laying around.
Oh, Lord.
That's big time. That's big time when the rats are frozen. That is real life. You got rats everywhere in Chicago,
seriously.
And now they're freezing to death. So this just must be what we need to get rid of the rats.
Mm-hmm.
The polar vortex.
A little nature at work, maybe a little bit. The photo that always gets me is the lakefront in Chicago when Lake Michigan is iced over, and it just almost looks like a completely different planet almost.
You know, what's crazy is I just posted on Facebook and Twitter. Lexi Studio Group also used to work in Kansas City. She took a video from her apartment this morning looking at Lake Michigan, and some of it's frozen over, and then there's so much steam and fog over the lake that's moving with the wind. It is beautiful. Wow. I mean, it's cold. It's cold, but it's gorgeous. You should definitely check it out because, I mean, it's just so cold. The temperatures are extremely cold over that water, and it's just making just a beautiful sight there. But, yeah, also what's happening here is we're getting those frost quakes, where people are hearing those booms, and everyone's like, where is that coming from? Like, what is that?
Yeah.
And they're frost quakes. They're
so how does that work?
So basically what happens is the water, like when you have snow or you have melting snow or you have rain or anything like that, it seeps into the ground. And then when it freezes, it expands. So it expands the soil. Then when you get this Arctic, that just happens all the time anyway. Then you get this extremely cold blast, and that has the water expand even more, and the soil expands, and you get a sonic boom. It's like a movement, kind of like an earthquake is, but not like that extreme. And it's nothing that you need to be concerned about. But then they set off these loud booms, and you hear like noises and stuff, and you're like, is that my pipes, or is that? Those are just frost quakes in many different spots. But it definitely could scare you, and we've had them all morning long.
My mom texted me this morning, so their cable internet is out, and then she said, I was waking up all night to loud noises around the house, and I'm wondering if that was part of it too. That's crazy.
That's absolutely, yeah, because my husband Jonathan was like, what is that? What is that?
Wow.
You know, and I was like, oh, because we don't deal with it that often, because yes, it gets cold here, but not like this, you know, so you don't normally deal with that type of sound, or you're just like, oh man,
I would have just attributed to having a couple of glasses of wine. It's like, okay, the room is spinning around. Okay, fine. Yeah.
So just go back to bed.
That's true too.
Right. Well, we're making a run at 60, right, Lindsay? Coming up, maybe, hopefully.
We have a forecast high on Sunday of 60. Yes.
60 degrees. That'll feel so much warm.
Yeah, that's going to be balmy. Like, people will legit be in T-shirts and shorts then.
They'll still need to wear sunglasses if I'm out wearing shorts, because that's going to be a pretty jarring experience. Kalee, we'll let you go back to being a mom. Certainly appreciate you taking some time, and good to hear your voice.
Yeah, you guys too. Miss you guys, and have a great day, and enjoy that 60. Can you give me some of that?
I know. We'll try to throw some your direction.
Thanks, Kalee.
All right, thanks, guys.
Bye.
All right, so, Lindsay, lots of warm thoughts after that podcast, right?
Yeah. Warm thoughts. Let's bring that warmth. Luckily, I mean, people might be hating. Okay, so we're the messengers, right? We're just kind of sharing the forecast. We are just the messengers at this point.
Because you guys sometimes get blamed for this stuff, right?
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, some of us do have buttons in the back of our weather center. We want to kind of play, you know, we want to play tricks on people, no. But I think we'll be really loved by the weekend. So we'll take it. It's going to be fantastic.
We'll take it, too. So big thanks to Bemidji Mayor Rita Albrecht for joining us and getting us up to speed on on how Minnesotans are dealing with the cold. Former 41 Action News meteorologist, now in Chicago for the NBC station there, a new mom, Kalee Dionne, for joining us talking about frostquakes in Chicago, and in our own 41 Action News Today meteorologist, Lindsay Anderson, for talking all things weather. I'm digital producer Sam Hartle. We'll have the crew back next week for another edition of the 41 Files podcast. Thanks for listening.